this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Magic the Gathering Arena. Today is Monday, February 10th, and we are back to playing. Let's see. Reroll that. And where are we? We're at like level 30, and this mastery started on the 1st of the month. So, yeah, I think unless we are just going to have a really more difficult experience going up a level, which I don't think it's logarithmic or anything. I think it's always 1,000 experience to go up a level. We'll be at 60 in maybe a week or two, a week and a half, and then we'll be at 80 in another week and a half. So you're talking about a month time, and then 90 in probably 7 days after that. So it feels like unless they just have a very abridged expansion, it feels like in the course of 2 months we'll be at level 90 plus, and then we'll just have an entire month in which every time we get another level, which you get about 1.5 every 3 days, you'll get a uncommon card, which I don't know really means anything. Like, more cards really isn't the problem at this point with me. The problem is finding time to play and build decks and do drafts and do all this stuff. And theoretically they want you to watch the World Championships too. I couldn't really care enough to do that. And I guess this ad to purchase more things, the text has been slightly changed, because this was the same image I think to pre-order before. What is the standard treasure? That's new. So in standard treasure, you would get 5 skins, which I really couldn't care about, for 2,500 gold. And you play a special deck. Let's see. At the beginning of each of your upkeeps, you create a artifact treasure token which can be sacrificed for mana of any color. The following cards are banned. Well, I know that there is a card that if you have 10 gold coins or 10 treasures, you just win the game. And there is a deck around that, but I'm not sure, since you can't really hover over these cards, whether these cards play towards that strategy at all. They very well may, but that's not worth doing. And we have a free entry, which would save us 5,000 gold, but I don't see a real reason to do a ranked draft beyond Theros Beyond Death, even though we know that they're going to change it so that these ranked drafts are on and off, which seems insane to me, that potentially we won't be able to do ranked drafts for 2 weeks. I'm gonna have to make a decision there, and really think about that, because it's probably fine to just save your gold up, and we'll come back 2 weeks from now, and then if it turns out I have 60 or 70,000 gold, let's see, what do we need to play today? Black spells, I guess. So let's just play standard ranked without for blood, and see if we can get up in ranked play. Yeah, I suppose if I just have a ton of gold after a 2-week period in which ranked draft with Theros Beyond Death is not available, and in that time that Theros Beyond Death is not available, there also isn't something I'm gonna play a little dangerously here. If there isn't a different kind of draft or gameplay style that actually appeals, then I guess I'd still be fine, because I could just play a bunch of games. We could just have a week in which we did a draft every day, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we could do that for 2 weeks, and that would probably fix things. Could play this, but I'm not going to. As for the accountability section, I had to really struggle. I worked on changing the chrome fixtures of my bathtub, the spouts, the handles, the overflow valve, and the drain cap. And I took it all apart and looked at it again, and it turned out that the all-in-one remodel kit didn't give me the piece that really matched the old pieces. This probably is a pretty regular problem with plumbing. There's just no consistency, no standards. Nothing connects to anything of any other company. That it is just a kind of nightmare scenario. So I had to kind of mix and match things. Some of the part of the old pieces with mostly new pieces, and so that kind of sucked. And I didn't have the plumbing reseating wrench to change the copper seats. The old ones were fine, I'm sure. Really, the only thing that worn out on any of the old things is just the rubber washers, which of course that's what's gonna wear out. There's definitely some corrosion and just calcification that's happened on the old copper and old metal, but it just makes it look uglier more than it actually threatens the stability of the system to actually work, as far as I can tell, not being a real plumber. Let's see, do we want to do this? I think we kind of have to at this point. So yeah, I took the whole thing apart and then finally got it working. But after that point, I managed to somehow, I don't even know how I did this. I kind of scratched up the palm of my left hand and my left hand middle, the ring finger. No, not middle finger, but ring finger. Just it has these like vertical lines of a scratch on them that, for the life of me, I cannot figure how that happened or where that came from. But there's just so much bending over, and I've got a bad back, and that just aggravated the situation, and so now I've been in pain again, and it takes so long for me to even heal enough to, it's never like permanently healed, it's just healed enough for me to forget about it and then injure it again, pretty much is the way it boils down to. Maybe I shouldn't attack here. This one can't block, so I could just do this, but maybe I shouldn't. So, yeah, that happened. My servers decided to find a new way to not want to work, and so it's still in this bad situation where it's just simply not going to do what it needs to do. Let's see. I'm experimenting with turning off like power management and things like that, but that seemed to create a kernel panic, so that was probably not the solution. But yeah, I am still under this agonizing thing, and I'm desperately trying to find a way to get like decently sized hard drives that maybe even have like 10,000 power on hours on them already. That wouldn't be too much. Oh, he managed to defeat me. I have like 5 hard drives out of a 16 hard drive ZFS array that have 50,000 hours on them, which is too many. And spending potentially $100 or more on each hard drive is expensive, to say the least. And I'm not sure how much of any of this is going to be really recoverable. You're just kind of never given any guarantee, because I'm still trying to get rid of and disconnect the one bad hard drive. I'm just in such a weird position that most people aren't at, as far as digital hoarding and how much data one has. I don't want to have to make the hard decisions where I just delete all the backups and get like an external 8 terabyte hard drive and then start making hard decisions as far as what stays and what gets deleted permanently. And more for the regular people who aren't computer nerds, that like you barely have any use for a computer, let alone a hard drive that's anywhere that big. So it's not, so hard drives aren't really going down in price because of that. I'm sure trade wars with China and coronavirus won't decrease the price of hard drives any also. I guess we can attack here. Just, I mean, he could block me if he wants. So the only YouTube thing related, I still need to schedule like 2, maybe even 3 series now are sitting on my SSD. So they need to be uploaded. To my surprise, some of my videos actually did make it to BitChute. It doesn't seem like all of them did. So I really don't understand how BitChute kind of works that in general. Like, I don't fully get it, and it certainly doesn't seem like it was linearly uploading backups of my channel, unlike the automated process to put things on Twitch, where everything, at least as far as I could tell, at least most of the videos were getting uploaded to Twitch in a nice linear order, and I was getting like no views on that. I don't think anybody goes to Twitch to see pre-recorded footage. Not so much the case on BitChute. Allegedly on BitChute, my videos are getting some decent views. Now, YouTube is hidden so much of the views as far as after the first few hours, days, that I wouldn't be surprised if some of my videos are getting 100 to even 500 views a week, and I just don't really catch it. Also, I don't waste a lot of time keeping my eyes on stuff like that because it's not particularly helpful. But this might be a system like where the snake is eating its own tail by putting the videos on BitChute and then getting some views on BitChute. Maybe it is possibly pushing more people to watch it on YouTube, and because of that, maybe the whole system is kind of going in circles. I mean, you just attack with this, don't you? Or you don't attack with anything, I guess, and you just end your turn. Oops, I should have attacked with all three of those. Did not read that card. There's a Raspberry Pi 4 enclosure made by like a Chinese company. It's about $70, and it looks kind of like a, well, it kind of looks like the casing for the Xbox Series X, where it's a tall kind of Alexa looking type device, and it allows you to plug in up to 4, and I imagine you don't really have to have only 4. You could really only mirror with 2. I don't think a 3-disc RAID array would help you any anyways, but you can put up to 4 2.5 hard disk drives in it, the laptop size hard disk drives, which that's interesting, but then it does kind of go back to the same problem that I would have had before, which is I really don't have any access to a good source of 2.5 hard disk drives any better than I have a source to 3.5 inch hard disk drives. Let's see. So this guy's gonna just continuously do damage. And I can like tap this guy for what that's worth. And then on my turn, I could tap this guy again. I seriously doubt he's going to be able to do a lot of damage here, though. Like, you're not going to be able to do 8 damage. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting idea if you wanted to do Open Media Vault on a Raspberry Pi 4. The transfer speeds on those are probably not very high. If we're just going to be honest, here's how we're going to get victory. We're going to play Taste of Death, and then Resolve All, and sacrifice our super powerful character, and then he has to sacrifice 3 of his, and then we'll just use this to play these 2 by sacrificing the food tokens that are created to do 2 damage. Like, you gotta love the synergy of this deck. Like, multiple paths towards victory. If we didn't win that way, we had plenty of health. We could have continued with the Bolo Citadel strategy. Lots of other opportunity there. And in a basic sense, increasing your opportunities to win is the way to play any game. This is a Ravnica pack, so it shouldn't be particularly surprising that these are all new cards, because I didn't really open any Ravnica packs, nor do I think it would be wise to open Ravnica packs. So that they weirdly push you towards owning older expansions, when I personally would prefer to just draw a line in the sand and say I'm not going to own any cards from the previous expansions. And I guess in Paper Magic that would be a lot easier to do, because you could just trade or throw away, or trade or throw away the cards from older expansions to get rid of them, or keep them in like a separate, these are the old card folders. I guess that is how you would organize your folders anyways, as far as cards, as maybe 4 folders, one for each expansion, one for commons, one for uncommons, one for rares, and one for wild rares. Or maybe you don't even bother with commons and uncommons, because they're so freaking common that you just throw those in a box, or you keep like 4 of those cards, 4 of each commons, and then you give away the rest. The fact that in Magic in particular you can end up with having a lot more cards than you're ever going to want or need is part of the problem with Paper Magic, for sure. Oh, another gadget I saw is there's a thing called the Multipass, not Multipass, but MOOLTIPASS, that is a little gadget that you have an ID card, you put it into the device plugs into a cell phone or a computer, and when you put in your ID card, you put in a short password, which would be, I guess, your potential area of weakness there, is that you can only put in 3 failed attempts before it locks, but then how do you reset it if it actually does lock, or is there no way to reset it? But once it's unlocked and you have your individual ID card in there, it will create, or at least I think it will create, maybe it just saves 256-bit AES encrypted passwords, so really long passwords in general, and it just types them directly into the computer like a keyboard. It doesn't put it in the clipboard, where there might be a virus looking at the Windows clipboard or whatever PC's clipboard. Theoretically it should work with anything, so an iPhone, an Android, a Windows, a Mac OS, because it just pretends to be a keyboard itself, and theoretically it should come with multiple user cards. It would be really silly if there was, if it only came with one and then you had to buy more. It's, I believe, about $70, which is a little too expensive, but it does help a lot of people who are technical and untechnical in a lot of ways. In the weird, it helps both sides, because people that are technical are going to love the gadget and want to play with the gadget. People who aren't technical are going to not really love that they have another gadget to mess with, but they're going to love the fact that they can have a password that can't be easily guessed or hacked without writing it down on a piece of paper or a post-it right next to your computer. The idea of the multiple cards works good for a family or an office scenario where you could have the computer, a main computer with the device itself plugged in, and then you just have to carry your ID card with you, and you can kind of walk away with it. Oddly, it probably would do better if it had a hole on it, so that you could stick it on a like retractable keyring, but I don't think it has that. So yeah, that's a gadget I think I might buy for myself this Christmas, which is definitely too early to be thinking about what I'm gonna gift myself for Christmas, since it's only February. But and yeah, I haven't gotten back to programming. I have a good opportunity to get back to programming my electric sign project, digital door sign, after I start getting videos uploaded, and that should happen later today if I can motivate myself. It's just so terrible. I hate scheduling videos so badly. As for video games I played, in the accountability section of that, I finished Snake Pass, and I hated Snake Pass. Maybe the PC controls are the problem, but I suspect not. Like, I looked at 2 reviews after it, just kind of checking my mindset, because I do kind of feel like my opinions are starting to veer a little bit more wildly opposite of a lot of other reviewers, but that may not be a bad thing. I just want to make sure that I'm not turning into a complete and total burnout, just a halfway burnout as far as video games are concerned. But yeah, of the couple of reviews I saw of people reviewing it when it first came out, and Snake Pass was an early days Switch game, so maybe on the Switch the controls are more intuitive and easier. Also, it was on the PS4. You would really be holding a game to a very high standard as a early Switch game. Anyways, so if I get Bola Citadel and one more land, I've pretty much won. But of the 2 reviews I saw, I did hear them both say, even though they were praising the game, they could be frustrating at times, and I found it just extremely frustrating for being a short game. From Sumo Digital, which probably had the resources to do a little bit more. I watched a 100% speedrun of it, and the speedrunner made the exact same observation that I made, that the snake you're playing as, Noodle, does not have any control of the back half of his body, which makes it very difficult. And as I was watching the 100% speedrun, I was just getting more and more angry at the terrible controls in the game, and kind of the puzzles that are designed around the terrible controls, in the way that they totally aren't, that they aren't built in any kind of fashion to be kind or easy to the player. It does not. Snake Pass obviously looks like a kid's game, but totally plays like it's supposed to be a super difficult experience. And there's not a lot of justification for that. There's no story in the game at all. You don't have a final boss fight. You find out that the bad guy who's been causing all the trouble isn't really a bad guy, and he didn't realize he was causing all the trouble. they had a conversation and that was it. It's so kid friendly. It's so like ages 3 and up level of storytelling, and there's really just no justification for it when it comes down to it. Like there's no reason for it to be that kid friendly when the controls are that bad. Right, well, let's see. Another victory. So what I've had to resolve to do here, since so many of those games are going to be scheduled, there's going to be potentially a 3-month period in which I'm just playing 3D platformers of some sort, depending on whether or not you want to include Fez as a 3D platformer, which it kinda is, but not so much. It's more of a 3D puzzler with some platforms in it. But I didn't particularly fall in love with any of those games. So what I've pretty much kind of resolved to is that even though there's been a small resurgence of 3D platformers, none of them are really great. So it was almost like a small experiment to see if a new generation could make them, and it turned out they couldn't. And Lego games, in a funny way, are kind of the new puzzle 3D platforming games. When you think about it, Lego has a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more collectibles. When you're particularly doing an open world Lego game that's good, like Lego Marvel Superheroes, there's a lot of platforming and climbing in that open world. When you're inside a specific level in Lego, there's also a lot of 2.5D, 2D platforming in that. So the platforming has been integrated into Lego and kind of nothing else. Like, you really don't see it too much in anything else. I mean, you certainly could say that there's a little bit of that in Doom, the Doom reboots. It's a little bit of 3D platforming, but you can make the same argument, I imagine, for some of the Halo series also, and that's not the main focus. And I can't say that every game that has platforming is a 3D platformer, or every 3D game that has platformer is a 3D platformer. It has to be kind of the main focus. And Nintendo still can do it. But Nintendo is kind of the only people that seems to be able to do it. So, yeah. It's time to move on, particularly if I'm only going to have one episode of something airing on a daily basis. It's time to find something more adult. We're still kind of in the middle of that whole situation of videos being labeled as not intended for children, the whole COPPA thing, and it becomes more difficult if I were to get 1,000 subscribers to make the argument that my channel deserves to be back in the YouTube Partner Program if there's long periods in which 50% or more of the games that I'm covering are kids-looking games, whether they're actually kids' games or not. Alright, well, this is kind of... We're gonna just have to see how this is gonna play out. I need a couple more people, otherwise I'm gonna sacrifice all 3 of my important people. So yeah, I need to move on. I probably still need to record footage too until I have the actual footage scheduled and it says I'm 3 or 4 months ahead. I'm not really in a safe spot, even though I dropped down to only really having one recording air daily. So that is another thing to consider. Right. I'm gonna go over and attack with everything and decide if he wants to defend with anything. Actually, yeah, why don't we go ahead and tap this. Oh, because I just tapped it, now I don't have enough mana to do this. So you can block with this or you can block with that, either way. The best move would be for him to block with this and block with that. That, I suppose, leaves me with the ability to play this later on. And if he does manage to play something big, we'll see what happens. There definitely is a problem with trying to find adult games. Like, there's a lot of them I still have, certainly, but there's also a lot of them that I don't really want to play. So, like, I know I wanted to play the Mad Max game. There's not a lot of relevancy to playing that right now, but that would be a decent idea. Just jump into something like Mad Max. Otherwise, I guess we should talk about the news. Denuvo was apparently removed from Devil May Cry 5 in the most recent update, and the employees who were working on System Shock 3 are apparently not employed anymore, which is maybe not a huge surprise, because that didn't seem like System Shock 3 was succeeding particularly well. Play this. Okay, I think we are good here. I mean, I should probably attack with this one, but not this one. Actually, probably wouldn't have hurt to attack with that one also. But this leaves us with this, and this to sacrifice with this, leaving this on the field. Alright, well then that causes a problem. So I guess I'll just have to kind of clear the field and just hope for another opportunity to win based on drawing one card compared to drawing another card. It's ever increasingly pointless to talk about, I guess, attack here. We'll try this a second time. It's kind of ever increasingly pointless to talk about how much news we have, but it does seem like we do have a slightly improved amount of news. Like, seems like we may be reaching that level where we are getting close to E3 and people are now out of their either tax prep or first quarter shareholder meetings phase, and they really do want to announce new things. So yeah, we got some news to talk about. We need to cover that, and then we'll probably, after we cover all the games that came out and all the news, we'll have a I feel like I misplayed this pretty badly, but whatever. Get 2 on the field, and then I can play this for more life if necessary. Alright, Bola Citadel. And land. And this for 1. And that's all I can do. We're at 6 if I can get 3 more without dying. Let's see. Drawing a card. I can play mana to play that. Play mana to play that. Play this to put something relatively cheap on the front. And what do we want to do now? We can't tap this guy. We can get health, but we can't activate Bola Citadel. I guess we can put this on the field and sacrifice that. I was listening to a John Baum cast after show. I listened to far too many of their little podcasts, clearly, but they were talking about potentially covering the man game. Which they wouldn't be able to actually cover. So, guess we take the action, so we draw that next turn. Because it has underage pornography, like someone lied about their age in one of the videos of like topless girls in the game. So, and they were talking about BMX XXX. As another game that they might cover, which even oh man, I could have played that. I could have played that and I could have won in that turn. It's an interesting thought if they actually did that and that did actually get them in some kind of trouble, or if they actually did it and it didn't get them in any kind of trouble with CBS. It'd be interesting to see how that actually happened, but it is also probably a premium thing. So as far as I know, since I don't have like premium membership and I really wouldn't want to fund CBS Interactive that way, they could be doing all kinds of weird things, certainly in the premium footage, which is what a lot of content creators of different sizes do. Certainly, is that people go way more extreme when it's not free. But what caught my attention there is that they were asked about like the state of adult games on Steam ever since Steam allowed adult games on there. Their answer was pretty dismissive and flippant, and I don't think it shows the deep understanding that people should get from that. Is that absolutely certainly there's a lot of low effort lewd adult games on Steam. Like you can't really deny that and be serious. It's obvious that that's true. But what Valve has done, for as much as I've disliked their approach and their way to kind of embracing a free speech mentality by allowing most lewd games, but definitely not all, on their storefront, is they've opened the door to a lot of older Japanese games that have maybe one nude scene in them. Like Princess Maker has like a cheat where you can make the Princess Maker daughter raising simulator has a cheat where the daughter can be naked. That would have been a prime example of a game that really wouldn't have felt as comfortable, I think, to put on Steam. And it did come to Steam after they embraced that new stance and sent that message. A lot of games that had nudity patched out for the Steam versions now through DLC are more directly allowing players the opportunity to make that choice for themselves and patch that content back in. Things like Honey Pop 1 would not have been as good of a seller if it wasn't on Steam, and Honey Pop 1 probably more than anything else opened the floodgates towards a lot of other games. And Honey Pop 2, which is about to come out, certainly wouldn't have been probably as well worked on or thought of as a viable project if it weren't for the fact that Valve took the free speech side over the censorship side. On the other hand, PlayStation 4 has taken the censorship side, and a lot of publishers are banning them. It's a lot of ways not that publishers just are all dirty perverts and want to make adult games, although some of them are, certainly. It's that they want the opportunities to be artistic and express themselves freely in any way. And the bigger issue as to why things haven't improved really is more of an issue around the fact that it's the ESA that's the problem, and the consoles. Like, very few games are Steam first and PC first and console second. So the rules have either stayed the same on Microsoft's and maybe loosened up a little on Nintendo's side, but gotten more restrictive on PlayStation side. Publishers have to find the median there, the average, the middle, that everybody will agree on, because if they're going to censor something for the PlayStation, that's not going to be good press, and it's going to push people to buy the games on the other consoles if they are uncensored. And that's exactly what we've seen, is that several Nintendo games have been less censored than PlayStation 4 games have been over the course of the year. And most definitely it opened the conversation where 10 years ago the conversation would have been shut down immediately. It would have just been end of discussion, no way are we allowing that. Just a flat no. And that's kind of what needed to happen in particular. And the discussion is still ongoing, certainly, like as far as how extreme or what's allowed and what isn't allowed in video games in general audiences. So yeah, there's a lot more understanding there that should have been had by it was Jeff and Ben talking about it in the after show. So yeah, both of them, like Jeff is in charge of Giant Bomb. He's allegedly, no, I mean I can't say allegedly, he's been working as a video game journalist for decades. He should kind of know the state and the reasons for these things, at least know the arguments from both sides better than just casually dismissing them as all awful. Like, and when asked about the current state, about how adult games are going on Steam, immediately diverting the conversation to talking about extremely old games from the 70s and 80s. He was talking about like Custer's Revenge and several like other games like that, and I'm like, alright, there might be some historical reason why you would talk about those, but that was not the question. And that pivot shows just a lack of journalistic research. Like, and as a journalist, regardless of whether you want to call yourself a journalist or not, you should kind of know the state of the industry. That's the whole point of E3 in a lot of ways, is to kind of know the state of the industry. At the very least, he could have made some arguments for things like Agony, which wasn't a good game, but it is certainly a game that only felt like it could have been made because of Steam. Like, Agony really wouldn't have even been attempted. And you could certainly talk about how there is a pretty high percentage of people that pretty large numbers of people that are willing to kickstart and fund those types of games. Agony is a great example of something that looked extremely demonic, hardcore, graphic, and pornographic, or at least explicit sexually, and it was kickstarted on those selling points, and then it was a disappointment because it wasn't a good game after that point. But there clearly is a desire there. These games sell, and that's something you have to admit. Is that when you had last year one of the top 10 selling games being Mirror on Steam, which is a match 3 adult game, there's clearly an audience there. I'm kind of going into a rant at this point, but I'm ranting about how dismissive journalists have been towards adult games, and with that dismissiveness, video games are never going to get out of their current state of development. They're never really going to grow up as much as they probably should and feel like, oh yes, there can be these adult products for adults. And certainly I've seen in a bigger sense, I've definitely seen people that never grow up mentally themselves. So yeah, if you're not willing to discuss or think about adult things, if you're still saying, ooh, that's gross, as a way to shut down a conversation and you're 40 years old, yeah, that's not really growing up. Like, there's particularly older people of the previous generation either pretend like they don't know things or actually don't know things. And that's, in my opinion, not mentally healthy at all. Anyways, let's get off this conversation because we have a decent amount of news, but there definitely is a bigger conversation to be had. The current state of adult games, maybe not great, but not terrible. There's also a point to be made that adult games kind of have a different goal in mind, so you're never going to get a super complicated, super long running game that takes like 100 hours to master. You're not going to get a Monster Hunter adult themed game. You'll get like patches to Monster Hunter that have some like new patches and things like that, but for the most part, short and sweet is the target time for those types of games. So slide puzzle games, simple games like that, match 3 games are, for their goal, the right kind of games to make. And you do have like visual novels that are pretty long, but they're not JRPG levels of length. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, From the Seas to the Skies, I look back at Bioshock 10 years later. This is an article from 2017 because it is the 10-year anniversary of Bioshock 2, and TechRaptor doesn't like Bioshock 2, and so instead of either not writing an article and not saying anything, they have decided to retweet an old article. This is unacceptable, and this is a lot of what Gamma Sutra does all the time, is just retweeting old articles. I think it's very unfair to dismiss Bioshock 2 because, well, I would say part of the problem is in Bioshock 1, I think people took the wrong messages. I think there are definitely people that saw Andrew Ryan, who represents Ayn Rand, who represents somehow the founder of modern day libertarianism, whereas honestly I don't think modern day libertarianism has a lot of foundation from Ayn Rand writing, as much as a lot of libertarianism is just extreme capitalism and extreme Republican politics in the United States kind of merged together. So take my opinion for that for as much as it's worth, which is probably not that much, but I do feel like a lot of people took the Bioshock 1 story and Andrew Ryan somehow as a model to act. I don't know how they got that message. They're like, yeah, I like this. This somehow makes me more of a libertarian after seeing this extreme libertarian hyper-capitalistic world under the sea completely fall apart and fail as a society. And frankly, it at no point seems to have really worked well as a society. It has this false narrative that there was maybe half a generation, I wouldn't even say one generation, that lived on the bottom of the sea and didn't immediately devolve into the war that it did eventually devolve into, but not really. Like, there's a huge amount of glossing over the way Bioshock well, Rapture in Bioshock would have been built, which would have almost certainly during the time it was set been done with poor, uneducated laborers. None of the scientists or philosophers that actually seem to have been living or having any high esteem in Rapture would have been the people building anything of standard things. So you see these giant buildings that really couldn't have existed without exploiting the labor class. And some of that is touched upon, but not enough. So yeah, people got the wrong story from Bioshock 1, and in a similar way, Bioshock 2 wasn't really allowed to tell its own story because it was made by a different company, just as a filler game, and it was trying to show an extreme shift of Rapture from libertarianism to communism, for lack of a better term, and a kind of religious fervor too. But if you were making the argument that Bioshock 2 was trying to show a highly dogmatic theocracy, it wasn't telling a very good story that way, and I could make the exact same opposite argument that Bioshock 1 had almost a religious theocratic worship of Andrew Ryan and theocracy. I think I could probably argue that a lot of people who are libertarians in the real world kind of worship the concept of libertarianism anyways, which would be a bit of an argument, certainly, by many. I guess the best way I could say that is that there are definitely libertarians out there that have a blind faith in libertarianism. And in Bioshock 2, there were definitely people that had a blind faith in the communism that was going on. But they didn't really get to tell the same story because it's still Rapture. And in retrospect, since Bioshock Infinite then got to tell a completely different story with completely different people that built a completely different city, you have a much better experience there, and undoubtedly it would be impossible to deny that Bioshock Infinite is about a theocratic Christian styled religious society that still is capitalist for the most part, and Bioshock Infinite does a better job of showing that yes, there are definitely people that they were exploiting, and they really got down to it and said yes, it was just racism, and yes, we were just getting Chinese people and black people and forcing them as slaves or as a lower class to build all of the city in Bioshock Infinite, which I don't even know the name of. Oddly, I don't even remember the name of what it was called. So we got some more cards, a lot of which are still expansions to things that cards from expansions that we wouldn't really use. So yeah, you might try to make the argument that Bioshock 2 was more of a socialism argument more than a communism argument. I think that argument probably falls apart though, and I don't think anybody really got those messages in Bioshock 2 or Bioshock Infinite 2. Like, I never heard anybody post an article after Infinite going, yeah, you know what, theocracies are bad, and you shouldn't have you shouldn't have societies built around people's spiritual beliefs, and you shouldn't allow people to use their spiritual claimed beliefs to belittle other people, other races. Instead, the story just got so muddled in Bioshock Infinite that everybody was just really talking about the ending, and quantum mechanics, and how did the flying city stay up there, where the bigger, more important conversations were glossed over completely. I would have liked Bioshock 2, certainly, though, since this is an anniversary and I want to talk about it. I would have liked it a lot more had it been a real, like, from the beginning communist society, or from the beginning socialist society, instead of Rapture turning communist or turning socialist. Now, in realistic terms, most societies, if they are going to change their governing model and their economic model, it would be from one thing to another. So, for instance, the communist bloc after World War II that became capitalists, not particularly successful capitalists, because there really wasn't ever any resources in the communist bloc, and any resources that did exist often were stolen away by individuals, oligarchs, criminals, and resources, power, things like that. In a nutshell, I should have blocked that, actually. That was a mistake. And inherently, a society's success is going to heavily be influenced by whether or not that country, that land is resource rich or resource poor. I imagine Rome had a lot of copper and iron in its region, and that's how it got very powerful. The Orient, as it was called, very successful and popular because of its unique and rare dyes and teas and knowledge in particular. So yeah, you kind of have to have resources before you can have any kind of successful society. And trying to rebuild a society in Rapture after it had already completely fallen apart was an unfair starting point. And all of these economic models are doomed to failure if you put them to their purest, most extreme versions. There needs to be some mix in there. Socialism, communism, and capitalism, none of them work if in their purest case. They all have different problems that have to be addressed and adjusted. They all need some level of government restriction without being so restricted by the government that things cannot actually happen, or people can't get their day-to-day lives moving in the right direction. It would also be very hard to make a pure communist or socialist society in a video game, because you want some kind of currency to have to buy bullets and guns. If you were in a communist society and you went up to like a bullet vending machine or a gun vending machine, and it said like prove your worth to society. So if you want these bullets, I don't know how you would explain that away other than maybe killing other people and getting their ID cards and using whatever social credit people would have to get resources, or perhaps in a twisted world like Rapture, by killing other people you prove to like an overseeing AI that there's now fewer people to take up resources, therefore you can have more resources individually. That too, I suppose, would work. Oh, this sucks. If it were more of a socialist thing, then it would be somewhat similar. The real big difference between communism and socialism is one is focused more on the government. All individuals, communism is all about all individuals working for the government, the military, the society in general, whereas where socialism is more about serving the people with a slightly more limited government serving the individuals. It's kind of the middle ground concept. And then capitalism is totally about the individual with as little government interference as possible, which leads to oligarchs and rich people and corruption. But certainly every one of those systems is open towards having corruption. But at this point, I've realized I've gone on another economics rant, which I do almost on a every tri-monthly basis. It seems like every 2 months I go on an economics rant. But yeah, I liked BioShock 2. I think it didn't get a fair shake in its development. I think the developers of the game weren't given a fair palette to paint on because they were constrained on what they could really do. Even in that, I still think it's a fine game. It's a fine follow-up for let's see. This is bad. Okay, how much does this cost? 5? I don't think I have enough there to tilt that. Next. So let's attack here. Ah. Well, I just lost. That was stupid of me. That was real stupid of me. Moving on, we have a game on Steam with a bunch of Asian names called Inkball Adventures. Looks like it's a black and white kind of nothing game. Like, looks like it's really unfinished, like tech demo. $3, $2.99 English and Chinese. Nothing special to say there. There is something to go back to BioShock since I was talking about it. There is something also to be said about like avant-garde game creators in general. Like, we really haven't had a lot of them, and they really haven't made a lot of games. Jim Sterling did a video talking about how a lot of people just don't even get credited for working on the video games that they worked on, and that seems to be a rampant problem, and a very good argument for unionization in the video game industry. But yeah, after 3 BioShock games, we've really not had a lot of other games that you can point to that have tried to tell a well thought out, or even somewhat well thought out story. Even though BioShock as a series was majorly successful. Like, you could say maybe Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice tells a interesting story. You could argue that the new God of War tells an interesting story. But yeah, in recent time, that's kind of it. Like, you can't really make an argument that the Zelda game or the Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, either one of those games are telling any kind of new story that we haven't seen 100 times in those styles of games, in those series of games. I doubt Halo or Destiny or any of those kinds of games are really telling anything. Dying Light, even though it is a good zombie game, is probably not saying much more than an average zombie game would say. If anything, the ambition to have more, like, thematically and storyline impactful stories has decreased over the past 5 to 6 years, not increased. I don't know. Like, I mean, you could argue that even Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is maybe more of a SJW game because it's talking about a mental health issue, but I wouldn't even go that route because I don't think it's particularly necessary. I would just say that even if we just ignore that and that potential accusation, you're still in a situation where there's only 2 games I can think of in the past 5 years that have tried to tell a real story. And undoubtedly there are a lot more, but they had no impact. And then, like, you have the most recent Far Cry, and the Far Cry series I don't think ever really has tried to tell a story, so I can't really blame it too much. But the most recent Far Cry game was complained about for not really telling a story, although in a lot of ways it was complained about because it was not telling the story that video game journalists wanted to hear, which was that all middle American people are MAGA hat wearing Trump supporters and evil by association. Yeah, in a weird way, it really has come to the point where video game journalists are making up the stories and narratives in what they're reviewing and how they're reviewing more than the game developers. Game developers just want to make games and say they're apolitical to avoid the video game journalists writing nasty opinion pieces that really have nothing to do with the game. Whereas the BioShock series cannot make the claim that it was apolitical. It was discussing economic and government models completely. And in all fairness, I don't feel like people complain. Like, I seriously don't think there was a complaint to be had as far as when BioShock happened. So it's sad that didn't embolden more people to be more of a storyteller. On the other hand, you have things like Death Stranding, which was trying to say a story, but I think he was speaking in a weird mental way in Japanese. And so I think the story of Death Stranding makes a lot more sense to Japanese people and makes very little sense to people who don't think by default in a native Japanese way of thinking. But even at that, I would still say that a lot of Death Stranding's content was in it to just promote his friends or put in a blatant advertisement for Monster Energy drink. A lot of the gameplay in it was in it for time wasting reasons more than anything. I think Death Stranding would have been a better game if it was shorter. And yeah, in a more rigorous localization process, I imagine a lot more would have been changed to make it a coherent story. I mean, as much as anime fans hate localizations and dubbing that changes the story, there's definitely some Japanese anime out there that really wouldn't make sense at all if it wasn't at least a little bit translated. It's just that often people go way extreme on that fact. For instance, I was just watching a video yesterday about Card Captors versus Card Captor Sakura, the anime, and how 4Kids had just moved all the episodes around, not translated several of the episodes, and tried to turn a girl's a girl cartoon into a boy cartoon, and pretty much failed miserably, and really irritated people who were liking the series but didn't have access to the internet like they do these days, where they could just simul-stream it and look at subtitles. So the only way you could watch it was through this cartoon version. And in previous generations, that certainly has been done even worse, where you have the whole Robotech series being a merger of 3 different unrelated animes shows. And the Power Rangers series, certainly all of the sections outside of the monster fights, or when the Power Rangers are in their suits and have their masks on, all of that footage was reshot for Power Rangers, at least originally. So there's like major changes. But sometimes that needs to happen too. Like, I can't completely disagree with localization. I kind of fall down to maybe you do a direct translation on the subtitles, and then if you're putting it on a broader source, if it's going on like TV, at that point you choose to localize it and do a localization. Speaking of TV, I watched all of Lock and Key on Netflix. I don't know if this is the book's fault or the translation's fault. I imagine it is the 10 years it took them to translate Lock and Key from comic book that was kind of trying to be like a manga to TV. It took them 10 years to They wanted to make movies out of it. They wanted to make a trilogy of movies. They wanted to make a TV series. It changed hands multiple times. I don't really think that Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, writing Lock and Key, wrote the story quite as bad as the Netflix series depicts it. And more importantly, I would say the artist who drew the imagery of Lock and Key probably got really screwed in the translation too, because there is no part of Lock and Key that looks at all artistically stylized. None of it looks like the comic book images that I quickly looked up on Google. The Netflix series does not in any way look or feel like it is a comic book TV show, for better probably, because it probably would have just been really childish and silly if it had. It would feel more like the X-Men movies, and I don't think it really needed that. But the story writing and the motivations of the main antagonist is just insane. Like, you have a character that is just so malevolently evil that from the word go is completely incapable of doing even the basic level of logical thinking is what it just kind of boils down to. Like, because the main antagonist meets one of the three main protagonists, one of the three kids of the Locke family, and has every opportunity to befriend that the kid, who is the youngest kid and would have been easily manipulatable, easily trickable. None of the kids really are that smart that they couldn't have been manipulated and tricked very early. The premise of the show is that there are these magic keys that give you abilities. Most of the magic keys do something interesting and fun. There's only 2 keys in total that that would have really been a problem. One that unlocks one of another character's memories of the past, which would have somewhat shown the antagonist's hand, but not really, because the antagonist can shapeshift, and so the memories that they would have seen wouldn't have really helped them anyways. And then there's the final key, the Omega key, that the antagonist wants more than anything. So it would have been super easy to befriend these people from the word go, tell them all about all the keys, and then just add that one lie that the Omega key is a death key. They shouldn't touch it. They should lock it away. Like, there's really no reason not to let all the other keys get into the hands of the other people. It's not like, I thought at some point it would be, you need the full collection, and there would be like 12 keys, and there would be a lock that required 12 keys. I'm fairly certain that at least one season of The Magicians on Sci-Fi Channel stole a lot of their concepts directly from Lock and Key and beat them by several years to getting published. But it doesn't go that way. Like, the antagonist just throws a random kid into the path of a train just for fun. There's a point where the antagonist is manipulating / hanging out with a character at the exact same time when she would have needed that character to have been home, so that her subordinate, who had at the time was at their house threatening them, threatening the rest of the family, so she was delaying her own plan and causing it to fail. And she does that like multiple times. The main antagonist does. And it's just like malevolently evil for no reason. It makes the whole thing. It makes me kind of wonder if Lock and Key really is for like early preteens, even though it seems to have quite a bit of dark imagery in it. Like, it's just not nuanced at all. The series on Netflix, season 1 ends on a cliffhanger for the most part, and leaves it open for a sequel. Whereas I feel like, since there was only like 6 volumes, which are pretty big volumes, I feel like all the story that was to be told in the manga volumes has been told, with the exception of 1 volume which was mostly flashbacks. I would also say Lock and Key a little heavy in flashbacks in at least one of its episodes, and it only has about 10 of them. Seemed like one episode did flashbacks to show you something, and then the next episode it did the exact same flashbacks to show you the exact same thing from a different perspective. So not terrible, but I would definitely say go watch The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix 2 or 3 times before watching Lock and Key, and wait until Lock and Key is done to watch it, because it will be a better experience, I think, in a marathon from beginning to end situation. I don't know if I ever mentioned that The Good Place ended. It did. I don't think there's anything else more to really say there, though. It's like, yeah, it ended. That's pretty much it. Probably gonna lose here. Jesus, it feels like I'm subconsciously avoiding covering video game news at this point. It's I'm certainly not getting anywhere fast with it. So let's cover the video game news. Gamatsu has an article here. Neo shipments and digital sales top 3 million. Team Ninja wants to create a new IP for the PlayStation 5. Okay. So Team Ninja specifically is probably the first Japanese company I've heard so far that says they want to specifically make something for the PS5. Probably doesn't mean too much, frankly. Like, let's see. I wouldn't even be surprised if Team Ninja is in part funded by Sony, so that would make sense. But there's a long history of Japanese developers making games on the PlayStation consoles. And a very good argument to be made that the PlayStation was still the winner and the successor in this generation, although with the Xbox One X, I think the momentum shifted to close to a tie, or even possibly a victory on Microsoft's case for the past couple of years. We'll see what happens when the new consoles come out. It really is the PlayStation's ball to drop, and they have been dropping it for the past 2 or 3 years. Yeah, every time I move, my back is spasming. It's not in good shape at all. Next, we have a game on Steam here called The Note of Red Evil, which looks like a Chinese visual novel / RPG maker game. English was not supported. Early access, $3.59, and a bundle for $4.46. Yep, I don't think that there's really need to show any more of this. The releases go on despite the coronavirus scares, which are probably blown out of proportion a little bit. There's still plenty of landmass in China not affected, and I don't know if that district was particularly a district where games were being developed and would be published. And in a lot of ways, it probably isn't too hard to continue the process of publishing a game as long as it's being developed. Anyways, people possibly can work out of their houses, assuming they have internet, which they probably do, and laptops, which they probably do. Next, we have a game on Steam called Broken of Darkness, which looks like another RPG game. We're not seeing any real overworld on this. It's $3.59 and English and Chinese, so it's probably just another Chinese RPG. Maybe arguably a little bit more polished, but you can see a pretty low effort thumbnail here. Yeah, and it kind of seems like there's probably just a very simplistic overworld map and a menu to change equipment and abilities, and then you just fight people constantly. Yeah, I imagine if you are a game developer in China, you probably do have like a government, not government, but corporate issued laptop to work from home. I would assume something like that could be would be reasonable. TechRaptor has an article here. Pirate roguelike Captain Contraband selling to Steam this year. So it's a pirate game that does not look particularly good. And this is an advertisement for game that's not out. Yep, that doesn't look that interesting. I suppose it is a valid question to ask. Is it better to talk about games that are coming out and hype out games that are coming out, or is it better to talk about games that actually did come out that tend to be awful? Assuming the quality is going to be the same either way, which it seems like it is, if you're talking about small games that are probably paying you to promote them in some way, versus just talking about what actually came out. I guess I've made my decision, and I do think it's better to talk about what came out and be relatively fair about that. I do curate a little bit. I haven't been curating in the past couple of weeks, but there is certainly a level of that is where it starts to make sense to not bother to highlight the 5th slide puzzle game, because it's not so much that I want to inform my viewers that of every single slide puzzle game or hidden object game that comes out. It's just to point out with some visual evidence that those kinds of games are still being made, and the state of Steam is as such. TechRaptor has an article here. The Anthem Christmas celebration is still ongoing. This was February 8th, which seems weird, but I guess it kind of makes sense considering how Anthem is all but abandoned, that they wouldn't even bother to take out to stop an event they started. On February 8th, the Scum VM team mentioned that they have Debian, Ubuntu, and Samsung TV packages for version 2.1.1 that have been uploaded, which I don't know if that is the first instance of it supporting those softwares. I don't think so. Probably isn't. Come to think of it. The newest version of ScumVM plays the Blade Runner game. And just has general improvements, I'm sure. They're getting down to the point where, unless it's a series of games that all use the same engine, which they've kind of tackled most of the games like that, it's getting more and more of a case where they're just trying to support as many individual point-and-click adventure games out there. And I don't think that they would ever bother to cover like Doom, Quake style games, because there's just too many emulators out there and cores out there that can play those files. So it would be smarter if they just merged like one of the Doom emulators into ScumVM's code instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Moving on, Gamatsu has this article, which probably doesn't affect anybody in the West. A Mobile Suit Gundam game called Senjo no Kizuna 2 has been announced for arcade. I don't know what Kizuna means. Probably, if I was to guess, means warrior or something like that, or some kind of leader, not like a high level leader, but like a medium level leader. Open Critic has an article here. Metro Exodus will be making its way to Steam very soon. This will be probably the first experience of a game that was exclusive to the Epic Store to see if people will be willing to play this game and buy it now that it's no longer an Epic Store exclusive. And it will probably be the first instance to see if the exclusivity deals really were worth it. Ideally, this is where the real boycott would begin, because if you can not buy this in the next 6 months, I would say, of it coming out of its 6 months exclusivity, which means if you just wait a year or longer, then they'll have to look at their records and say, oh, that Epic Store exclusive was not good for us. But if a bunch of people buy it on day one, then they'll say, well, then they'll justify the exclusivity deal and say it made us good money and it was a good idea. Of course, they can twist the facts to suit any narrative they want, and they probably will, but if you make it as difficult as possible, that's a little bit better. See, whenever another non-token creature controls dies, you may exile it. If you do, creature create a token copy of that creature, except it's 1/1, and it's a nightmare in addition to other types. That might not be a terrible way to get more vindictive vampires on the field. Let me see if we could throw that into our deck without any real trouble. Let's see, if I was to take this one card, and then what do we want to get rid of, like a spinning wheel? Or this? We'll get rid of Gruesome Menagerie, which is a fine card, but it's a little difficult to play with. There's a quote here that says, "Those of you that have been waiting, thank you for your passion and patience." I guess that's as nice as you can possibly be to potential new purchasers of your game on Steam. It's not really like Metro Exodus blew people out of the water. Like, even Borderlands 3, which by all rights should have blown people out of the water, really didn't. They mention here is Epic gave developers an 88 to 12% revenue split, where Steam does a 70-30 split. And that's really the only reason why people took it. Also, in all fairness, let's see, what does this one do? Oh, do we want that? Like, the DLC is oddly available for purchase right now, too. All this does is it takes control of my card. That's all it does. Which I can kind of easily defeat. I wish I had these fancy skins for these lands, but I certainly wouldn't be willing to spend any money on it. Yeah, so the DLC, the two kernels, is already available for purchase, but the game is not up for pre-order. It's kind of hard to figure, honestly, as far as how much of the Epic Store exclusivity issue caused poor turnout for the video game world in general last year, because those numbers can be relatively high. Right. I can't play this right now, and I would like to sacrifice this, and something else. So I think if I just do no attacks, I can win in the next turn, potentially. Or at least devastate his strategy. Gamatsu has an article here. Netflix accidentally published then pulls a Resident Evil series description. It was set in the town of Clearfield, Maryland. Let's see, what does it exactly say? Town of Clearfield, Maryland is long stood in the shadow of three seemingly unrelated behemoths: the Umbrella Corporation, the decommissioned Greenwood Asylum, and Washington, D.C. Okay. So it's going to involve an asylum, some government agencies, and Umbrella Corporation. Today, 26 years after the discovery of the T-virus, secrets held by the three will start to be revealed in the first signs of outbreaks. The question here is, did they manage to remove the rights to make these movies from the people who were making the previous Resident Evil movies? Because that director, I think it was Uwe Boll, but I could be wrong, was just putting his wife in it and giving her work, which is a good thing as a husband, but it did just have a bunch of kind of stupid action movies get made that were fine, but not really amazing, true to character stories as far as the Resident Evil series. They didn't feel like Resident Evil games. So I'm going to sacrifice this, and this. And then he's got to sacrifice 3. So I don't know if the new Resident Evil series on Netflix is a TV series or a mini series, or if it's a animated thing. I don't know what the target audience for sure is going to be. It could be several different things. Okay. Yep, that's all I really needed to do was devastate him. And look at that, we're at Silver Tier 1. Gamatsu chose to put a picture of Sheva and Chris Renfield as the characters. They almost certainly are not going to be the characters that show up in the series. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a whole new collection of people. Yeah, with Resident Evil, it could be anything and everything. It's always important to remember with the Resident Evil series that there have been as many bad Resident Evil things as there have been good Resident Evil things. Bad games, bad movies, bad spin-off games. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Shooting Star, which looks to me like it's pretty much just a Flappy Bird kind of game with a slightly different way that it plays. 59 cents, English only, nothing there of interest.
Just the trick for this.
Let's see. Which one is this? Can't draw more than 1 card per chapter, it says. Okay, that might be a problem. Maybe. What is its other ability? Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal non-creature. Alright, well, go ahead and put that back on top. And put that on the field. And then attack here. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Corvus, which looks like an asset flip, low effort first person shooter game for $1.19 English only. Still getting those. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Patched World, which looks like a clone of the totally accurate battle simulator game. Doesn't really look like there's anything else to say there, though. I probably would play tabs before I played this, and I have really no interest in playing tabs. It's $3.99 discounted, English, Japanese, and Chinese. I really wouldn't even venture a guess here if this was a cheap English product, a cheap Chinese product, or a cheap Japanese product. It could be any and every. See, if his only strategy was to play that one Planeswalker, he's lost. Although I don't know why that would be his only strategy. He's meanwhile building up Mania. See, he's trying to destroy my... He's trying to destroy my deck, which is not going to really work. Because I can just do this, and this, and then this. Let's see. This game is not tagged adult content, oddly. It looks like it would be adult content, but we have a game here on Steam called Venus Blood Frontier International. Usually when you see a game that looks like this and it's labeled international, that probably means that they're saying it's censored, but also translated. There's a lot of anime characters, although this does not look particularly interesting as a gameplay style. I'm gonna play white here, and that'll confuse them for sure. Yeah, you've got some characters with some boob windows and cleavage, but certainly you have a whole cavalcade of different heights and different bust sizes as far as the characters are going. But yeah, I imagine this is censored. There's a group I follow that is called like the Censored Police or No Cut Content Police. This is Japanese full audio, by the way, so the thought here, I guess, would be to look and see if this game is in a non-international version on Steam, or if it's region locked, possibly. So there almost certainly is a patch for this. The question to ask would be, is it worth the effort, like to play the game, to potentially see a few cutscenes, like a few images, because that's probably all you're gonna get. And the game does not look good otherwise, even though it is rated very positively. You know what, I'm gonna put this on the follow list just to have a follow-up on it later on. But probably not gonna make it to the follow list, or the wish list. Okay. I'll exile that card.
Witness a mote of my power.
Okay. Now, bring back this. And this guy doesn't have death touch, so we can go ahead and kill that.
In here.
This is gonna deal 1 damage to me every
I
turn.
can help with your not being on fire problem.
And he killed one of my guys. Darn it. Well, I don't think this is gonna work for him as well as he thinks it is. Let's see. What does this do? Let's get rid of this, and then do this, and this.
Your efforts are futile.
This guy's just playing planeswalkers, and basically nothing but planeswalkers.
I outsmarted you eons ago.
Alright, now we play this, and this, and come on, hurry up. This. The only thing that would be a problem is if I manage to kind of kill myself by lowering my health too much. Seems like that's kind of unlikely to happen. And we only need a couple more cards to activate Bold Citadel.
Another time, Planeswalker.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Puzzle Patrol, which looks like a Tetris game. It looks alright, not great. It is visually polished more than a lot of other Tetris clones. It's $4.24 discounted, which is a little too expensive for this style of game. This may not really be a Tetris game as much as some other games that play differently. There's another game that plays like this that's not called Tetris, but I can't remember the name of it. But I don't think that really changes much. I don't think Tetris or the other game are particularly fun enough to be their own standalone things. When you consider, like, one of the Nancy Drew games has a Tetris minigame in it, and frankly, many games could have a short Tetris minigame in it as a side narrative, lockpicking minigame type thing. Open Critic has an article here. Swords are getting reworked in Destiny 2. I don't care about Destiny 2, so I'm going to leave that to people who want to read that article if they want to. The game played a weird sound effect when it loaded in. I thought I was going to get a free victory. Next we have a game on Steam called Tron, which looks to me like a platformer shooter type game. See, this might be one of those retro games that actually is worth playing in a weird way. It might be a little bit too much of a bullet hell game for me, and it might not play well. But I kind of want to put this on the follow list. It's $5.39, English, Japanese, Chinese. It might be a good Chinese game. I'll go positive and say, hey, it might actually be a good Chinese game. Or it might not be a Chinese game at all. So many games try to have that nostalgic feel, but don't look or feel like an actual nostalgic game. Instead, they just feel and look like a low effort game. This looks like they were actually kind of knew what they were doing, which is surprising because I've not really seen a lot of people that did seem to know what they were doing when it comes to making old games or making NES style games Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Road Redemption Revengers Assemble DLC is packed with cheesy memes. So I don't know this game Road Redemption, but apparently it's got a bunch of outfits kind of looking like characters from Avengers and some other meme characters. Seems like there's three cases. One is Theranos, which is like Thanos, PC Master Race, and Admiral Uganda. Which I guess this is Admiral Uganda instead of Captain America. See, Second Dinner is looking for a marketing director to lead in their quest to bring upcoming games to players around the world. So they're also looking for a senior game designer. So they're really still trying to scale up and hire as a company. I kind of would have preferred that he had more people willing to quit and leave Blizzard and join him. It doesn't speak particularly well for his leadership skills when you are the person who seems to be in charge and of Hearthstone, and you leave, and then 6 months down the line you're just trying to hire publicly for some basic levels of employees that you would have wanted to have day one. Like a marketing person, a PR person should have been kind of a day one thing to promote and announce your new company. Even if you had to hire an outside marketing firm, which would have been probably an acceptable way to do this, do it. This guy has just everything. See. Next we have a game on Steam called Kill or Love, which I think I would probably guess is a Western visual novel. Maybe a Russian visual novel. It doesn't seem visually polished, and it doesn't have any like bright color backgrounds. It's very black and white and dark and dim. Even for like a Japanese horror game, that seems weird. It's free to play, which also seems weird. And it's English only. That's 2 to 3 hours of content and 4 different endings, so super short. Has this person developed anything else? No. So yeah, I don't know. Wow, just a ton of things. Well, let's do this then. We're just gonna tit for tat and hope that we win. How does this work? Whenever a creature with Death Touch blocks it or becomes blocked by a creature, destroy that creature. That sucks. That is a crazy enchantment. So he's got this whole thing where he's buffed up his characters in such a way that this one character is almost undefeatable. Unfortunately for him, if I can manage to get one more mana, I will defeat him, and then that will at least reset us. There's 4 cards here. It's really hard to look at everything. So we need to just block. Okay, we got it. Play this, put this on top, take it, and then I suppose we can just attack with everything. There's really no reason not to. He can just block with whatever he wants, and that'll still do 1 damage. Oh, and then by the way, do this. And then do this. And then do this. And then next turn we got Citadel, which will speed everything up even more. All he's got is the Mirror's Shield. Ooh, so we now know what the Mirror's Shield was giving that creature. It was that whole Death Touch element. Next we have a game on Steam called Hexon, which Looks like a single screen Unity puzzle game that's zoomed out too much. Doesn't look particularly interesting. 69 cents discounted, English only. Here we go. This. That. And then we can just say no attack. We're fine. Next we have a game on Steam called Princess Castle Quest, which looks like it's a top-down block puzzle game that is very poorly animated. Early access for $7.99, that's laughable. Allegedly full audio English, but I severely doubt that. Nothing needs to be said there. Let's just do no blocks. We all need to do blocks. We can win just doing this. He killed my Bola Citadel, which is slightly remarkable, but it's not going to save him. Gamatsu has its weekly listings of job listings. Let's see, we have mid to senior programmer for Airship Syndicate in Austin, Texas. They're apparently working on an unannounced PC console game. I've never heard of Airship Syndicate though. Level designer for Running with Scissors in Tucson, Arizona. Senior game server engineer for New World Amazon Game Studios in Irvine, California. Senior software engineer for Vicarious Visions Activision in Albany, New York. Not really sure what Vicarious Visions has done specifically for Activision too. We have assistant professor in game development and design for Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, which, if I was perhaps a little bit more accredited, I won't say qualified, I'll just say accredited, I probably could think about applying for that one. Teaching people game development and design in general concepts wouldn't be out of the line for a video game critic, and it's way less unethical than moving from a video game journalist to a video game developer to a video game journalist back and forth, as many mainstream video game journalists do. So now the question is, how do I get the last few hits? Because I need 6 damage before he can really heal. If I'm gonna do this right. Probably could attack with these and be fine. And have them defend with one of these, but you know, it probably don't even have to defend. Let's see, if we did this and then this and then nothing else. He's got no cards. TechRaptor has an interesting article here. Daedalic's valuation dropped from 12 million euro to 14 million euro, somewhere around there. And it may affect Lord of the Rings Golem, which I forgot that they even were making that game. Daedalic, known for making moderately acceptable point-and-click adventure games, and has been stretching itself pretty thin, trying to make games that aren't that good or aren't point and click adventure games. Maybe just bit off more than they can chew, or very possibly their valuation was just overpriced. Let's see. They say one of the key terms used is impairment losses. Impairment describes a permanent reduction of value of a company's asset, typically a fixed asset or intangible asset. Almost like maybe Brexit affected them somehow. Although they're a German company, so I don't know why that would happen. Let's see. The translation, let's see if we attack here and see what happens. By TechRaptor says, despite having pretty good success over the last few years, Daedalic Entertainment simply costs too much to operate. As such, the company the company that is the majority shareholder is going to have to make some cuts. So, yeah. It doesn't sound good for Daedalic. But it doesn't seem particularly off either. Like that totally feels accurate with Daedalic. Like they were trying way too hard.
Please protect my pet.
If there wasn't so much funding behind THQ Nordic, I would make the exact same argument for them too, is that they probably are overvalued and really expensive to run. So here we've won. Let's go ahead and attack here. And it doesn't matter if they defend or not. Anything they do leads to my victory. And see, he's just not paying attention to this. I have like a distinct advantage because of the fact that each one of these characters have one health. We just need like one more victory and we'll be up to gold tier. And we haven't gotten anywhere close to all the news covered and we're already at 9 victories. We're having a very good winning streak today. Gamatsu has this week's Japanese game releases. So let's just quickly go through them. Astrobot, Dead by Daylight, Death End Request, Daracine for the PS4, I don't know that one, Dreams, Hatsune Miku, Project Diva Mega Mix, Street Fighter V Championship Edition. All of those also on PlayStation or PlayStation VR except for the Hatsune Miku, which is on the Switch. So it's gonna probably be a pretty good week for PlayStation this week, but probably not as good as you would think because it's more than likely still going to be the top 10 sellers are just Nintendo games that have been the top 10 sellers for the past 3 or 4 weeks. Digitally only, they have Ballistic Craft, Daemon X Machina, Everything, which everything is for Switch and PS4, whereas almost every other listing here is for PC. Florence is for Switch and PC. Gothic Murder, Ume o Keiru Adventure. I haven't heard of that one. Let me see if that link goes anywhere of interest. Labyrinth of the Witch for the PC. Luna, the Shadow Dust. I probably haven't heard of that one either. Spaceland for the Xbox One. which is launching worldwide, Street Fighter V Championship Edition, Super Tennis Blast for the Switch, and Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate for the PC. And they're mentioning some prepaid Japanese cards for the PlayStation Store and the Nintendo eShop. I don't know why you would really need to mention that those are available for sale every week, because I imagine they've been available for sale for a while now, unless some weird law has just gone into effect in Japan. Let's see. So one of those links I clicked as far as PC games coming out this week takes me to a visual novel murder mystery game where English is not supported. Seems to be labeled as Gothic Murder, and then the other game I clicked on is this, called Luna the Shadow Dust, which is a point-and-click adventure game that I somehow have not yet seen, which makes sense because it's not out yet. So I can put this on the follow list, but it doesn't really mean anything. Like, it just means I'm prematurely putting it on the follow list, and will almost certainly end up looking at the game a second time. Gamatsu has an article here for PC, PS4, and Xbox One. Remnant from the Ashes Physical Edition launches March 17th. It's going to be distributed by THQ Nordic. Was just talking about them. I believe Remnant Through the Ashes is kind of a, well, they say it's a gunfire games, third-person survival action shooter. It's kind of like a almost Diablo game if you made some tweaks, I suppose is about the best way to describe it. At this point, 4 turns in, or 3 turns in, it's probably smart to just play this. He's playing a red deck, so he's probably going to aggro on this character and try and kill it. Okay. Down on the field. No attack. Here's a big story Gamatsu has. Arcana Heart series developer Examu is going to suspend all operations. Ongoing development is going to continue with Team Arcana. Company cites gradual diminish of the business as the reason. What would be interesting is if we could see perhaps Examu this list of games. So let me come over here and see if we can Google this company. Games developed: Samurai Showdown 5, Samurai Showdown 5 Special, Arcana Heart Full, Arcana Heart 2. A lot of these are SNK games. Arcana Heart 3. Console games they made: Arcana Heart 1, 2, and 3. Aquapalooza, Aquapalooza Stream Match. Yeah, I'm not sure any of these were sold. Yeah, a lot of these were sold in the West, though. Hello Kitty and the Apron of Magic. Also, Million Arthur Arcana Blood is their most recent game. And yeah, not a lot of games, and very much the Arcana Heart series. As far as what they're most noticeable by. And I guess that probably explains why why there hasn't been a huge outcry there. Because I don't know if I could even tell you what Arcana Heart is as a series, other than it's probably a fighting game if I was to guess. Here we have a troll game, Sakuya Izayoi. I don't think these are actual Japanese names. I don't think the spelling right is there. Gives you advice and dabs. And then here you have MS Paint level graphics with just the same background over and over again in a visual novel selling for 59 cents, English full audio allegedly. Yeah, right. Yeah, they're not telling you at all how long it will go. Instead, they're saying that you can just go for as long as you want forever, which is bull. Like, I could play any game for as long as I want forever. Okay. I think we can pretty much win here. Gamma Sutra has an article with 2 million sold. Take-Two is unsure how Game Pass affected the Outer Worlds. So this was a game that was on Xbox Game Pass, I assume is what they're talking about, because I don't know what other Game Pass they could be really talking about. Yeah, it was the Xbox Game Pass. It was a day one launch of the Outer Worlds. I would probably argue that the Outer Worlds would not have succeeded as well if it weren't for being on the Game Pass, but I'm not 100% sure that's the case. The Outer Worlds was kind of squeezed into the Christmas holiday, if I recall correctly, and that probably did open up some realm of a different experience. Discards. So this guy can, I think, do 1 damage to me, so I just lost. I don't think there's a way to win here. Gamma Sutra is still promoting its sister company, the Independent Game Festival. Or, I don't even know if IGF actually is part of the same company as GDC, but I think it is. I think GDC owns IGF, and GDC is the sister company of Gamma Sutra. But I'm not seeing a disclosure here admitting that. So I guess I could be wrong. This doesn't look particularly interesting, whatever this is being said here. So few people are going to go to IGF or even care what is shown or talked about there, that it's not particularly news for a consumer. Next we have a game on Steam called Art Pulse, which looks like a VR painting game. And looks about as good as any other VR painting game I've seen. $12.99, English only, requires VR. I really don't think I would spend so much money to get a VR headset and then want to paint with it. Honestly, if I was going to paint, I would just paint with the actual paint and canvas, so you'd have a permanent thing at the end of that effort. Here's that card I was going to try. So Let's see how that works. This guy's saying hello. How do you say hello back? It doesn't even make a sound. I probably muted that actually. Did I mute that? Nope. So it just by default doesn't even make a sound. See, next we have a game on Steam here called My Name is Sarah, which looks like it might actually be a game. It's been a month and 10 days, and we have not seen anything that was of single A or double A quality. This actually looks like it might be. Now there are some problems here, or some potential caveats here, in that I don't recognize this publisher, I don't recognize any of these developers, and we are just looking at a cutscene of what seems to be a kind of muddled story where you're in VR running around the forest, and maybe some of those are connected, some of those aren't. But this does look pretty. This doesn't look like an asset flip game. But all we're seeing is running, so I think it probably is more of an adventure than anything else. But looking at it, it actually looks more like a survival game. I don't know. I don't know that. Maybe it just had a lot of polish there. Well, we'll put it on the follow list. That's the reason the follow list exists. They want $19.99 for this. This is English with full audio. Yeah. Maybe there's something here. Maybe there isn't. We'll just have to see what the reviews say. We leveled up again. We got like 5 levels today already. And we're making it up ranked. Gamasutra has an interview here. Game design philosophy, the full Hirokazu Yashuhara interview from 2008. So again, they're they're reposting a very old article that's also broken up into 5 pages. Now I do have ad blockers blocking the ads, so it doesn't really matter to me if it's broken up to 5 pages, but it is kind of silly how short a article tends to be in Gamasutra's case. They tend to barely be 3 paragraphs. With 3 sentences at most per paragraph. Let's see. Gamasutra also has an argument here. King's Sabrina Korma wants more women in game dev leadership. Now, I think this lady was one of the she wasn't one of the people from Digipen. I know one of the female students that worked on Portal went to work for King, but apparently that's not her. Interesting. But let's face it, if you're picking a employee based on their genitals instead of their skills, you're doing something very stupid. This is a very, on the face of it, on the title, SJW identity politics statement to say. Let's see. There's very, very few positions in game dev leadership. And statistically, it's been kind of proven that it is females that don't want other females as leaders, even more than women, than men don't. So, if you just break it by gender, it falls apart as a concept immediately. I think there are qualified female people out there that are probably too smart to become game developers and get better jobs that pay elsewhere. But also I would admit that there's a bit of a boys club that you can't just immediately turn into a girls club and solve the problem. You have to embrace the bigger egalitarian idea of saying, hey, we're going to hire people based on their skills, not based on their SJW points that they can get, or their oppression points they can get, based on their identities or their perceived identities. Moving on, that's going to turn into a rant really fast if I don't. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Mobile is now Activision Blizzard's leading platform for revenue. I think we kind of knew that when they announced Diablo Immortal. Diablo Immortal, the cell phone game. We kind of knew that's where they were focusing, that's where that was going to go. It's not surprising, particularly that's the way it's gone. If anything, I think it might be a lack of growth on console that caused that, so that they lost market share on consoles and PCs, particularly I guess in Blizzard's case PC, and the secondary category of mobile caught up. Well, moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Stadia's free tier to launch at some point within, quote, the next few months. This is the definition of not news here. We don't have a date. We don't have even a window. This means there's no reason to write an article about that. Hey.
Nobody appreciates my handiwork.
As much as I appreciate people fact-checking a lot of articles, I think writers and editors should at the very least have some fact in their articles to be checked, otherwise they shouldn't publish at all. It's so ridiculous to say such a generic statement.
Just a flesh wound.
I mean, I could say the exact same thing, that the Xbox Series X is going to release at some point in the next few months. Like, I can say that and probably be technically accurate. Nobody could really call me on it unless the Xbox Series X comes out 2 years from now. Oops, I did not see that one. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Off-Road Mania, which looks like it is a kind of low polygon off-roading game. Which, the concept of off-roading, I don't think has been given done justice, particularly in video games so far. But then also the concept of off-roading, I think, is a very niche sport done in person for its maximum enjoyment or any real enjoyment. What people would enjoy in off-roading when you're driving through mud, driving up long hills. Here, let me just show some of the things. You got rocks and bumps, and you're trying to race to a specific point. Enjoying doing that in your custom truck is one thing. Playing this in a video game, it's just going to feel like the controls are awful or the level design is awful, because the game's not going to really help you. And yeah, this does just kind of look like a mobile game, but the concept's there. with more polish. Maybe this could be a mode in some racing game at some point in the future. But standalone as how it looks now, I think no. This is $4.49 discounted, and it's English only. So put a pass on that one. Let's see. Been talking so long, my teeth hurt. Next we have a game on Steam called Top Run, which looks like a infinite runner with some level of visual polish to it, but I don't really see anything here that interests me. I'm gonna take basic land and put that one on the field. Yeah, looking at all these screenshots, it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't look like anything. Kind of looks like it's that Adult Swim game where you had a unicorn that you were infinite running, and yeah, that was fun for about 5 minutes to play. So Top Run wants $4.24 discounted, has several language support, just in the interface though. Okay. I think I can possibly stretch this out long enough for Bolas Citadel, and if I can get Bolas Citadel, I can win. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Boris and the Dark Survival, which looks like it's a spin-off of the Bindi games, which I'm not sure are particularly good, because here you have that character Bindi. 99 cents English full audio. Let me see. Yeah, Bindi and the Ink Machine. It's a $19.99 that's rated very positively. So this spin-off, is this a horror game actually? First person puzzle and action horror game. Okay. And Boris already is positive, so I guess I put it on the wish list.
An assassin coming for you.
I should have probably killed that one. Come to think of it, yeah. I should kill this one so he can't buff this one up, and we'll think about blocking later. It's a pretty rare occurrence lately to get a game that actually makes it to the wish list, and in all fairness, having two games that are where one of which is a spin-off on the wish list is kind of dangerous, because I might buy the spin-off and then force myself into purchasing the original game at a higher price, which is, I imagine, why they make spin-offs in the first place. Okay. We needed to have done this and this. That way I save enough life. Let's see, next. No attacks in turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Battlecraft Tactics Online, which almost seems like it is a tactical placement, almost mini chess game with some square blocky graphics. It seems like it's probably a simplistic kind of clicker game in part 2. It's early access, free to play. Within that purchases, single player and online player versus player. I imagine there's going to be a heavy emphasis for online player versus player. And it does definitely feel like it's a gacha game where you just get more and more collectibles. Speaking of gacha games, Destiny Child's the game I play on my cell phone is done with its world boss. I accidentally bought some extra runs at the last minute, which cost me 1,000 of the premium currency, which I was not happy about. But otherwise I went pretty well with it. I didn't get everything. My team, when fighting a world boss, because you fight world bosses with a lot larger numbers of combatants, my team is still weak, but I'm making very good progress otherwise. Just need to continue grinding at it, and 6 months to a year I'll be doing very well. And I'm doing pretty well now. I'm in the top 20%. If anything, I'm in the top 13% of the global version of this game.
People call me a death dealer. I rarely step out. I'm good at killing, but I don't always enjoy it.
Well, I've lost here. I mean, I can attack this fine, but in attacking it, I leave myself wide open for an attack, which they could have done anyways. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. THQ Nordic establishes a Slovakia-based Nine Rocks Games based company called Nine Rocks Games to develop a shooter survival horror. They'll be headed by industry veteran David Durkak. I honestly wouldn't have been able to tell you if Slovakia was still a country. It's been suspiciously out of the news lately, which probably means it's doing fine. Let's see. The staff of Nine Rocks Games has previously worked on titles such as DayZ, Soldier of Fortune, Payback, Conan 2004, and Chaser. So I'm not expecting an amazingly great first-person shooter game from this company. I think THQ Nordic really is just trying to go quantity over quality in a lot of ways. I think that is the thing that's going to potentially have THQ Nordic could go the exact same route as THQ and just fail miserably. Speaking of failing miserably, maybe I can't make it to gold tier. My lucky streak seems to be wearing off here. We have a game on Steam called God or Evil .1. This looks like a low-effort RPG Maker Chinese game. English not supported, $1.99, Chinese only. Yeah, no surprise there. See, if I got a victory here, I might make it to gold tier. Gamatsu has an article here. FK Digital to discontinue development of new titles and cancels Chaos Code next episode of Extreme Tempest. So, I don't know what Chaos Code is. I don't know FK Digital. So I don't know if this is a mobile developer or what. Let's see, there's a list of games that they've made. Let's see, products. Yeah, Chaos Code, Japanese game, Chaos Code, Mononoke, Slashdown, World Tree, Marche, Radio Hammer Station, Witch and Hero 3, Koi, Ninja Usagamaru. I think I may have looked at that game on Steam at some point. No, it doesn't even say it came out there. A lot of these are PlayStation VR games. That might be part of the problem too. They don't know how to develop for Quell Memento. The Quell series, I think I've seen on Steam. But yeah, the vast majority of the games FK Digital made Japanese only and not particularly quality games from the looks of them. I just gotta throw this out. Like, I think my strategy of holding back is wrong with Cauldron Familiar. I just need to throw it out. First turn, get 3 damage with it, and on average that'll do more damage than waiting later would. Gamatsu has an article here. The 90s survival horror game inspired Heaven's Dust. I don't know why it's horror game inspired. Heaven's Dust launches for the PC and the Switch in February 27th. Let's see if there's a video here. I don't particularly. I guess it's supposed to be 90s inspired horror game, or a 90s horror game. I guess that is. It's supposed to look like a 90s horror game. Which, in all fairness, this does not look visually like a 90s horror game. This looks much closer to a 2000s horror game in graphics. It's not amazingly good, but it's better. Like, part of the problem of a lot of those horror games of the 90s is just the terrible first generation graphics. But I will say Heaven's Dust does not look particularly interesting. It says it's a hopeless story with multiple endings, perhaps even a good one. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Ultimo Reno, which looks like it's a MMORPG with some very standard fare MMORPG elements. It's free, it's online with a third-party account in EULA, it's English only. It's highly unlikely it would be successful. Okay. So, kill this. Kill this. Yep, still hurting my back like crazy. I'm gonna have to spend 2 or 3 days lying in bed. Tech Raptor has an article here for a game called Skellboy review. Like, it's a skull. This almost looks like a Paper Mario clone. Interesting. I would not be upset with a Paper Mario clone. An RPG with a flat art aesthetic. So, don't disappoint me, Skellboy. Tell me that this is a Paper Mario clone and it works pretty well. Nope. 5.5, a standard hack and slash adventure. Skellboy offers a fun twist on the usual inventory format. Beyond that, though, performance issues and a general lack of polish leave the game feeling underdeveloped. Well, darn. Pros of body parts provide a fun and fresh take on armor management. So you change the body of the character in the colorful 8-bit art style. Cons are little to differentiate itself from the pack. Mundane combat and slow movement. Regular substantial frame drops also. I guess I should look and see if there is a Paper Mario style game. Something with that flat animation style that is just kind of a basic RPG otherwise, or a simplified RPG. Next, as a YouTuber, I think it's worth mentioning this, that Susan Wojcicki on the 8th spent the afternoon picking up trash and old bottles from the San Francisco Bay Lands. Her boots seriously got stuck in the mud a few times. It's beautiful scenery worth cleaning up. I don't hate the idea of rich people in charge of huge corporations giving back to society and doing something nice. But Susan Wojcicki in particular should be in her office doing her job, and it really does feel like she's so uninterested, and this is just one more instance of this. She's so uninterested in running YouTube as it is that she would rather go pick up trash on the beach. She's easily getting paid enough where she could pay a whole crew of people to clean up the beach. And even if you were going to do something like this, you're virtue signaling by putting it on Twitter, particularly after the fact. I don't think... Yeah, there's no tweet here on her public Facebook that has anything to say about, hey, I'm planning on doing this, everybody come. So she's not even trying to encourage people to come and support the effort. She's just virtue signaling. You really can't call it anything else than that. I guess if this guy could give me more health, I could play this and maybe survive here. I'm gonna have to be careful. Meanwhile, YouTube is still pretty much a mess. So seriously, you're in charge of YouTube. If you don't want to be in charge of YouTube, leave. Let somebody else be in charge. But don't waste your time doing something that's beneath even what your worst enemy says your skill set is. Like, it's ridiculous. I mean, in all fairness, CEOs and upper management are pretty useless idiots that just pretend and act like figureheads. But you could, at the very least, pretend and act like a figurehead and pretend like you don't have the time to do that kind of things. Now, in all fairness, I think there also is a decent argument that regardless of what Susan Wojcicki did, I would not be super happy with her actions, because the one things that YouTubers want her to do is kind of the things she doesn't want to do, which is improve the YouTube site for content creators. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Philophobia, which the fear of love, which it looks to me like it's kind of a poorly animated platformer with an element of a shadow and lighting mechanic. In here you've got a guy just talking the whole time. That wasn't the video I was looking at before. Like, so you move and it changes the lighting, and that seems like that might affect the world somewhat. This is $9.59, English full audio, and there's just not enough polish here for this to be a game that I'd really want to play. Unfortunately, it seems like we're not going to make it to gold tier. Not today. We were getting some victories and then we fell back down. So this one is, I guess, the next one to get another skin. What would be nice is after you did the mastery, you got all of the lands skins. That would be really, really nice, because then that would be something that you could show off in every single deck you played, regardless of what cards you played. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Loic, which looks like it's just a mess of a 3D turret shooter. So it looks like you're kind of mostly on the ground. You seem to be able to move a little bit, but you're shooting at things flying around, and there's just a lot of darkness and a lot of glowing neon, and it just looks visually horrible. And then you've got whatever that is supposed to be. This looks like a troll game, or just a garbage game. It's free. It's English only. I'll leave it at that. Let's see. Next, we have a game with just a bunch of Asian characters. Apparently, it's a hack and slash RPG. It actually doesn't look too bad in the video. Let's see. Suppose this is another reason why a lot of the characters are drawn so small, is because they're designed with the idea of animating them from this perspective on a mobile phone. English is not supported. This is $12.99, Japanese only. Doesn't look terrible, but if they're not going to support English, they're not going to support English. Yeah, that we had that whole long conversation that may have just been a rambling argument or beratement on my part when one of my fans asked why the anime characters often look super small, and there's a lot of reasons, but some of the ones I missed were sometimes that it's because the games in particular are designed for mobile phones. Sometimes it probably comes from the fact that the average Japanese person is about 4 foot, 4.5 foot when you're talking female. Next, we have a game on Steam called Generation Streets, which looks like it's kind of nothing. Looks like it's a fast-paced tank shooter. It's free to play with $5 DLC, single player only, English and Russian. I don't see anything of interest there. Let's see. Cyan, the creators of Myst, although frankly they're a second generation at this point that's actually working on games, has put out an announcement that they are working on a collaboration between Numius Games and Cyan Ventures to publish and create a game called Area Man Lives, which seems like it's probably a VR game. Now, Cyan did already kind of do that with another game that I don't even think is being listed here. Let's see if it's hidden over here somewhere. Nope. They kind of published another game that has been sort of expunged from their list, and their game Firmament is the one to really keep an eye on, because it might be a little bit make it or break it as far as Firmament, because Abduction was fine but not great, and if they have Abduction then it's just fine but not great, and Firmament comes out and it's fine but it's not great, it doesn't bring back Cyan into people's minds as a creator of great games. It just makes them a shallow echo of what they once were, which at one point was the best-selling and arguably, critically speaking, the best game developers in the world for a while there. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Spec Ops The Line developer Jaeger nets a minority investment from Tencent. So Tencent is investing in yet another company. That really seems like that is all Tencent does, is every quarter they are just negotiating with people to invest in other companies. It's access investing. Chinese government probably laundering or manipulating its currency for Tencent's benefit so that they can afford to invest in companies outside of China, so then they have influence over the video game industry, which is the biggest media entertainment industry out there, so that China can censor things. And if you don't believe China believes in censorship, you only have to look at the coronavirus and how they're covering that and handling that. Moving on, Komatsu has an article here for the PC and Xbox One. Turn-based strategy RPG game Tears of Avia launches this summer, which, yeah, looks like another RPG game. From P-Cube. Looks like a bunch of anime characters in different types of dress. Let's see. It looks pretty average, but I will say there is something to be said about the quality. Looks just a little bit better when, like, here. When you see this running, you see this animation, you see these menus. Looks a little polished. They even threw a shirtless guy into the mix, so it's not all girls. Yep. I would like to see all JRPGs and RPGs take it the next step, improve the graphics a little bit, no longer do the bare minimum or come out with things that look like Super NES games. Next, we have a game on Steam called Blockbusters, which looks like it is a Unity game where you flip squares. Looks like it's probably player versus player, and it doesn't look that interesting. It's free to play with DLC. Yeah, online player versus player, English only. I'm gonna go ahead and skip the next 5 games or so, and just cover the news articles, and then we're gonna wrap up, because every time I shift in my chair, my back is spasming and it's not fun. Tech Raptor has an article here: Buying Happiness, Why Nostalgia in Games is So Effective. Yeah, nostalgia unfortunately works way better than it should, but there is also an argument that some of the old games, with just little tweaks or full remasters, are still really good games. Gamma Sutra has an article: Nexon Korea agrees to 6.8% pay raise after talks with the union. So South Korea, most of the jobs in South Korea, I think, are union jobs, and it, in a weird way, probably has played a major role in why South Korea is a more stable and more financially successful country than many of the Asian countries around it. Japan also has union jobs, most of them. Don't think there's much more to say than that. Nexon Korea makes Maple Story. A 6.8% pay raise for someone in the United States would be a relatively huge raise, particularly when you aren't then guaranteed, if you got that kind of raise, that you would never see another raise for at least 5 to 10 years. It's not just that people don't get raises in the United States, it's that they often don't get raises consistently to follow the cost of living increases, or they get raises that are below the inflation cost of living rates, or they just get laid off or fired, and then they have to take a job that pays less. In fact, unemployment in the United States, as silly as it sounds, says you have to consider a job that is 10% less than what you were getting paid. So if you were getting paid below what you could actually survivably afford, 10% less than that, who cares? Or if you were barely making it and 10% less than that, it's not a good system at all. When the one time you should take your time and really think about what your next career path is going to be and where you're going to go is when you're currently unemployed, because that's when you have time to fill out applications and take interviews and actually like improve your education a little bit and things like that, redo your resume. But that's not how it works. They try to rush you back into employment to a worse job, and temp jobs in particular will scour the list of the unemployed people and offer you the worst positions you could possibly think of. They'll only last 30 days. They're just preying on desperate people. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article, Oni-Chamba Origin is coming to Asia with English voiceovers this summer. I think we already covered this before. I seriously still kind of question, though, whether Oni-Chamba Origin won't come to the West. It feels like it should, but if it's a PS4 only game and the particularly Western releases on the PS4 are getting censored, Oni-Chamba Origin would not work its way into that category. Let's see. The other story they have here is Katana Kami, A Way of the Samurai. Story details bodyguards, accessories, and costumes. This is for PC, PS4, and Switch. It looks like it is a pretty basic RPG game with some weird looking costumes here. And there's nothing majorly impressive here as far as this game is concerned, and that probably explains why I haven't heard anything else about it. Or, you know. And then that takes us to the Humble Bundle. So let's see if there's any new Humble Bundle. Let's see. No, it doesn't look like there's any new Humble Bundle, which will take me back to my Twitter feed. Team Naughty Dog is putting out a tweet of a cosplayer. I don't get too many of those tweets from game developers directly. Let's see. I did look at the Lego Masters series on Fox, and unfortunately it feels like the Fox curse is going to be on it. The main host, the guy who played Batman in Lego movies, is too much of a kind of jerk comedian who's making fun of himself and playing a character, but it doesn't really work in a Lego competition. They hired a couple of cosplayers that I don't think barely knew anything about making Legos, so they definitely weren't qualified. I feel like at least one other group out of the 10 groups, so like 2 out of 10 weren't really qualified to be Lego designers on a Lego competition show. It's not particularly a kid-friendly series. It doesn't particularly focus on the Legos and zoom in the camera well. They for some stupid reason animated the sections, and so they're paying some huge amount of money, I assume, to have Lego animations show up when they should just be putting in a tight GoPro camera and showing the actual Lego builds. And even as a game show, it's a weird game show because there wasn't a quick like setup challenge that you could win immunity for the next challenge. No, it was 15 hours broken of them working, broken down into a, I believe, 45-minute to an hour long episode, and the winners of that one competition that took 15 hours, which honestly 15 hours to make something from scratch on Lego, even if you have an infinite amount of Lego, is still pretty good. But after that, they gave a immunity idol style golden brick to one of the contestants, and then they ended the episode. So episode 2, they could use the immunity idol, I guess, at the beginning of the competition. I'm assuming they can't use it at the judging part of the competition, but maybe they can. So yeah, Lego has taken that BBC show, Lego Masters, or Fox has taken the BBC Lego Masters and put the Fox edginess on it, trying to make it more like a Family Guy than really going, hey, why don't we have one show that is just kid friendly on Sunday night. ABC did very well with the Once Upon a Time series, I believe is what it was called, where it was a somewhat adult oriented show, but not really to the point where kids couldn't watch it, of like Sleeping Beauty and all of the Disney characters forgetting that they lived in Fantasyland and living instead in the real world, and that worked pretty well. And yeah, Fox could certainly use a few kid-friendly shows. They don't all have to be Family Guy. Well, I went through my Twitter feed. There's no real new news. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.